Hello and welcome to the Power of Connection and Biz Show. I'm Kimberly Lane, Leadership and Development Consultant, Employee Engagement Partner, and your host. Today we have a really thrilling and exciting show. Our guest today is from San Diego, California, but more importantly, he is a former Navy SEAL. He's had 3 combat tours to Iraq and 1 advanced special operations deployment to the Pacific. Since retiring, he has decided to be a founder and is the CEO of the Trident Approach. And the Trident Approach is an organization designed to find the human spirit of people, leaders, and the organizations for which they serve. Please welcome our wonderful guest, Diego Ugalde. Diego, such a joy to have you here today. How you doing?
Amazing. Kimberly, thanks so much for having me here. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. I do have to ask, what's that logo behind your head? Is that the Navy SEAL logo?
That is the logo of the Trident Approach, actually. Yeah.
Ah, very cool. Looks like it has a little bit of a, yeah, I like that. Very attractive, very powerful, actually. Very,
Thank
I like
you.
that a lot. Did you design that yourself?
I did. Just, it's one of those things when you're starting up companies, there's all these whole list of things that you got to do. And that was one of them. And, like naming your organization and how's that going to be. And it takes months and months and months. But this one just sort of happened to appear in my mind one day, and I was so grateful for it. And I took it to one of our guys and I said, "Hey man, can you make this look cooler?" And he's like, "Yep, sure." So he took my little triangle and trident and he made it look as clean as you see now, and we love it for sure.
Yeah. You can make that into a tattoo, a mask, arm bandit, logo on a hat. Great for t-shirts.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I like that. So, well, great. We're going to just jump right into it if you're okay with that.
Sure.
I'm fascinated, and I'm sure our audience is just as fascinated just about your experience as a Navy SEAL. So is there anything you can share as far as how being a Navy SEAL has prepared you for your role today in working with leaders and executives as a leadership and executive coach?
Yeah, absolutely. So the most common question that I got when I was working active duty in the SEAL teams from corporate executives was, how is it that you guys communicate and work so well together? And I think that question was the way it was, and I got it as often as I did because of our reputation. We do have a reputation of being, the most cohesive and elite teams, anywhere. And so, there's a bunch of reasons for that. And one of them is, in a SEAL team, about half the people are Navy SEALs. The other half are what we call tech support personnel. So you got all these operators, and then you have medics and logisticians and tech people and HR type people and all these things. And so being in a SEAL team, it's like a microcosm of really America, because you got people from all over the world, sometimes different cultures and things. And it's not just SEALs there. We have to depend on people for like our medical records and make sure that our admin stuff is all taken care of. And so, and also before I became a SEAL, I was a tech for SEAL Team 7 as a medic. And so I saw sort of the other side of what life was like at a SEAL team when you're not a SEAL. And I'll just say that when I became a SEAL, I took very deliberate care to ensure that I was communicating with everybody to cross those bridges, because, we can get front side focused sometimes as SEALs and just kind of be locked in our own area. The other thing that I think that had a big impact on my career and kind of a big say about how the Trident approach came to be was I was a country officer stationed in Germany once. And what that means is it was my job to integrate all the training between American Navy SEALs and Navy SEALs from all across Europe. So like the Norwegian SEALs and the Polish SEALs and Romanian and Bulgarian, that type of thing. So being in that position, I had to talk to everybody. I had to lead and communicate with everybody, everything from ambassadors to commanding officers of other organizations to media and all those types of things. So I was really lucky to have this broad spectrum view, not only of like roles and responsibilities for people, but cultures and organizations and things. And the last thing I think I'll say about that is leadership has been important to me throughout my life. It's been something that's been, whenever I notice sort of like injustice going on, or maybe that could have been handled better either within myself, or if I was on the receiving end of something when I was a little kid or whatever, I always, imagine myself, here's how I would do it if I could do it over, or if it was my choice to do this. So 20 years in the military, it wasn't just sort of happenstance, just kind of hanging around. I noticed like I took deliberate efforts when these tests came up to either say, yeah, this is the way to go, or there's a better way to do it. I think all of that is a culmination of how and why the Trident approach was born.
Love it. Yeah. So you're now more than ever, I think, having the ability to be able to communicate with various levels of your team. They're, like you said, they're not maybe all at your level, but you've got other medics and other people on the team that you need to be able to be cohesive with and be able to communicate. Every leadership has that same dynamic on his team, right? And then we're becoming global organizations. And so being able to resonate and communicate and understand different cultures and what's important to them and how they communicate is a very much a talent that's required in leadership today. And you hit that spot on. And, I think always leadership is not always easy, right? And sometimes being a leader means doing something that's not been done before, or finding a new way to do it, because how we were doing it before, say in 2019, now with this pandemic, we can't be doing that same way anymore. So great insight onto that. Appreciate that. So would you say, are there any parallels that you would say between being a leader to being a Navy SEAL that you could kind of elaborate on, even if they're possibly the same ones?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you mean, like being a leader in like the corporate environment?
Yeah,
Or,
like I guess,
yeah.
can you tell me, can you tell a story about where you, a difficulty you had as a Navy SEAL, and where that story would possibly be applicable to a leadership environment? That work?
Yeah, absolutely. It sure does.
I knew you had
Um,
many of those, so yeah.
yeah, I wasn't a very good SEAL when I started.
Oh, interesting.
I struggled a lot. In fact, nearly every single step of my progress through my career there was resistance. Somehow either I was unknowingly creating it for myself, or, it could have been a number of things. And the one thing that I knew though, from having, it took me 8 years to become a SEAL. It's supposed to take you like boot camp in 6 months,
Oh, I didn't know
so
that. That's dedication
yeah.
there.
Yeah, well, it was something that I felt like I was kind of born to do. And so when I ended up showing up, as a new guy, you're showing up in a very type A environment where these guys are the best in the world at what they do. And it's like sink or swim sort of thing. And I desperately wanted to learn. But when I look at my peers around me, especially back then, I was like, it was clear to me that I didn't learn as fast as other people did. And so I had to work harder. I had to work longer. I had to do all this stuff just to keep up. Well, in an organization that's like that, that's an elite level like that, I stood out immediately. And so what I found as I was kind of growing up and getting my teeth kicked in and that kind of thing, figuratively speaking, was that there wasn't a lot of patience for people who were showing up not already at this level. Because almost, I mean, to be honest with you, Kimberly, almost everybody who shows up to the SEAL teams, they're the strongest, smartest, brightest, fastest learners. It's just part of our general makeup. But I wasn't all of those things. So when I realized that, it wasn't going to be this, all right, cool, Diego, let's look at it from this perspective. Let's look at this, because I wanted to be there. Like I was fighting like heck to be there. So that wasn't a question. It wasn't a question of motivation. It was just understanding some of these more complicated things, like clearing houses, looking for enemies. It's very fast, very dynamic, very violent stuff. It took me a while to learn that. And so what I found was, once I got in a leadership position, when I saw other people coming into the SEAL teams that were like me, I took great care in slowing down, taking time for them, let them understand, hey man, you're not, this isn't the end of the world. We're going to get through this. You're going to be just fine. Because that's what I ended up being. I was a senior chief in the SEAL team. You can't become a senior chief in the SEAL team because you're completely lost. I found myself. It just took longer. And so I always just made sure that I took the time, not only for the guys that were showing up for, but also for the leaders that came under me, say, hey, this is our normal way of dealing with stuff. We're not dealing with it this way, because there's people of real value that are showing up that sometimes we're just kind of pushing off to the curb. So I think that's really a major example of what I learned growing up, and then who I became sort of as a father figure in a lot of cases as I got higher in the rank structure.
That's a great story, because I think in really any avenue of life, and not necessarily but leadership, but maybe you're a teacher who's a leader, right? But everybody learns in different formats. Everybody comes to the table with different skill sets, but you can't teach passion. You can't sort of teach motivation. You can't teach drive. And if somebody has that ingrained desire, that's a powerful tool. And as long as you can, provide the insight, the guidance of what you've done with those other individuals like yourself coming into the SEAL team, they're able to achieve their dream. And I think that's really what, I think you really made a powerful statement there, Diego, because that's really what leaders are there for. Leaders are there to really, I don't want to say coddle, but to cultivate and resource.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's the word I was looking for.
Inspire, yeah, absolutely.
To inspire, to give them a sounding board to help them with a path to achieve their dream, because maybe they come from backgrounds where they don't have those resources, and that's really truly what a leader is. That's a great story. Perfect story. This show is about the power of connection in biz, and the impact, I believe, that the more we're connected as people, caring about each other, whether it's leadership to employees in the scenario you just represented, or even organizations to customers. But obviously, with the Navy SEAL team, there had to be an amount of trust and a great level of connection there, right? Can you elaborate on that scenario and how that was so powerful, in any story where that power of connection, prevented the team from getting hurt or accomplish a major achievement, or anything along those lines you can share with the audience?
Yes, absolutely. But it's just the way we go about doing things. Every single thing we do, you got to have culture, you have to have trust, you have to have communication, leadership, and teamwork, and all those things. I mean, you just have to. It's just a standard. In fact, it's so normal that we don't even think about it. It's just a way about going about doing business. So literally every successful operations we had was purely based on the amount of time and effort that we put into training and developing this trust that we had, and subject matter expertise and things like that. When it becomes second nature like that, it's great. That I think that's a big reason why I always got those questions. How is it that you guys work and communicate so well together? Because it was just part of who we were. It wasn't like we decided to do trust building one time and then just went on with our lives. And so with the Trident approach, that's why I was so part of the reason why I was so excited about unleashing this on corporate America and athletic teams and things like that, because sometimes you don't have the ability to live and breathe those values. And so what we can do is we can help people come into a place where they can see what it's like to be in that space of trust and leadership and communication, and see how it impacts. And so one of the things, I got a bunch of stories, but one of the fun stories that I love to talk about is, so what we do is we put people in those positions of really understanding on a deeper level of communication and culture and trust and that kind of thing, but we tie it into some kind of like SEAL mission sort of. And so, for example, this organization asked us, hey, we need help with trust. So, okay, so what we did is we built like this, like a minefield. So there's all these landmines and tripwires and things like that. And so one person going through the minefield is blindfolded, and the other person's job is to help them get through the minefield, and they themselves are not. I just so happened to have a CEO of a major organization, had 20,000 employees, and he was going through, and he was the one that was blindfolded.
Oh, wow.
And his partner, you know, who had been with the company for 10 years, was sitting there helping him move his way throughout. And so he had to get on his belly because he had to do a kind of a low crawl under this tripwire. And he knew in his mind that there were landmines everywhere. And he's yelling at the guy. He's like, "Where's my knee? Where's my knee?" Because he was afraid his knee was going to trip one of the landmines. And when I saw that, I looked at his employee and I saw the look on his face. He's like, "My CEO is going to destroy my life if he hits a landmine." And he was petrified, like real fear. And so I was like, "Hold on a second, time out, time out." I was like, "Hey, man, do you have a blindfold on?" And he said, "Yes." I was like, "Does your brother over here have a blindfold on?" He's like, "No." And in not so many words, I said, "Well, then just listen to him, because he has your best interests at heart. He's not going to let you go down the wrong path. Are we good?" And he's like, "Yes, I could do this." He was still really intense. And at the very end, he finally made his way through, and he stood up and he took off his blindfold, and he looked at me and he looked at his employee and he says, "I don't trust anybody." And he basically broke down in tears. And that's what I love about the Trident approach, because it's a safe place to make those kinds of mistakes, because most of the time we're not even aware. I think that on some level he was aware, but it was never so like prevalent. There was no turning away. It was just the three of us. There was, you know, there was nothing to kind of hide behind, which was really great. And what I loved even most about that is he called me up a month later and he started to talk to me about all of this trust incorporation stuff. He's unleashing his employees to do all this stuff. And I just love to hear that, because oftentimes, you know, we don't know how we are being received by other people, especially when we're not kind of used to looking inward and facing those types of things. So do we have time for another story? I got a million of them. But
yeah. One quick thing, but I want to comment a bit, you know, because I speak to at organizations, and I also coach leaders on being conscious leaders. And part of that conscious leadership is to know what your own blocks are, right? And in this particular situation, he probably never really thought about it until it was blatantly in his face, and how he really has limited ability to trust other people for whatever reason it is, right? But him really being vulnerable in that moment, sharing that, enables him to heal, and then to therefore build trust within his organization. I mean, but it's going through that exercise of consciously seeing what your block is to be able to improve it, right? And so many of us, all of us have blocks, and it's just really being a conscious leader is really about doing some self-awareness, and that's a great exercise in order to bring that out. So yes, we do have time for another story. Go for it.
All right. So another one we had is we have this sort of a leadership race where one person is in charge of the team and they're delegating and all these things to get all these people to accomplish all these tasks within a certain time frame. And this guy's sitting here and he's absolutely yelling like at the top of his lungs for all these people to do all these things. And I could see the stress in their face. I could see the stress in his face. And it seemed to me that he wasn't necessarily aware kind of what was going on. And I was like, time out. Hey, do you know you're yelling at everybody? And he's like, "Oh yeah, no, this is just because, you know, it's just an event. I don't always do this." And all at the same time, three of the people who he was directing stopped what they dropped the stuff that they had in their hands, and they turned around and looked at him and said, "Yes, you do. You yell at us all the time." And the best part about that was I looked at his face and he was just lost. He heard maybe for the first time of this thing that he does on a daily basis that he was never aware of, and exactly what you're talking about with awareness, he never knew. And when I saw the look on his face, it was almost like he just got slapped really hard. And so what that also equated to me was trauma. He just sustained some kind of trauma. And so, you know, I was like, "Hey, don't worry about it. This is the place to make mistakes."
Yeah.
But if you could do that any other way and do it over again, how would you do it? And he kind of gathered himself and he's like, "Well, I would do it this way, this way, and this way." And I was like, "Okay, time's starting again. You have less time, but you still got to go." And the cool thing about that was really for the first time, he was like greasing his gears on how to communicate under stress to his team in a way that they needed to be communicated to for the betterment of them. And communication and leadership is an art. It's not like you automatically nail it, but what it did was, you know, break that seal so that he knows from now on, hey, you know, this can happen. And if I want this to come out of it, you know, let me take a second and breathe first, and then make sure that I'm coming out in the best way possible to my organization. And those are the things that we really love so much to see.
No, that's powerful. I think sometimes as leaders, there's a barrier between us and the employees. And so the employees feel they can't speak up to what they're hearing and seeing and what they need. In this case, he was always yelling, and there was never a forum or an avenue or a safe place to be able to allow the employees to do that. You provided that opportunity, and he had this aha moment, right? What I like to call in the coaching, when I'm coaching and consulting, it's almost like, if I can get leaders to be conscious, what we just talked about, and aware, almost as if they replay that scene as if they were watching it on stage, right? Take the emotion and ego out of it. Now you objectively view that scenario on stage with you and that person, or you and your team, and observe yourself. And you're going to see yourself yelling and realize that's not the way I want to be personified as and heard. And so, you know, that's a great message about trying to be able to take a step back and observe himself. And now he's got an avenue where his employees or team are going to be able to hopefully, whenever he's doing something that's not constructive, be able to raise a hand and say, you're yelling at us again, right? Whatever that might be. So great story, great story. Anything else you want to leave us with, Diego, before we close out the show today? Any other message or storyline or?
Yeah, for sure. So what I would say, and I'm glad to hear that you're a coach, a lot of people feel that because they're in a leadership position, that they've got to have all the answers. And if you kind of let down that vulnerability, you know, it's not a good thing for people to see, you know, who's really behind the curtain. I would just suggest that if you are in a leadership position, please understand that you can't do it by yourself.
Yep.
You don't have to seek out people within your organization, but if you have a coach, if you have somebody that you can trust, that you can dump all of this stuff on and they can help you kind of sift through everything, we all need that. I have a coach. My coach has a coach. You're not meant to go through this life on your own. It's not all on you. At the end of the day, your decision-making process is on you, but, you know, coaches are so valuable. If you don't have one, you're cheating yourself, you know, at the end of the day. The other thing that I would leave us with, I mean, we talked about COVID in the beginning. I would just take real great care in when it comes time for business to go back to normal. When you're reintegrating your teams, it's not going to be like business as usual. People, everyone in your organization has gone through their own private experience since this whole COVID thing, you know, went off. And so one thing that you should be very, very mindful of is when they start to show up and we're, you know, getting, like I said, back to business as usual, they're not going to be the same person.
Right.
So one of the most valuable things that you can do for your organization is reintegrate them before they all come back. It shouldn't be like, hey, it's Monday, you know, here's all these due outs. It's Monday and it's, how are you? How have you been? What's been going on? How can we most support you? Because people, you know, there's all these things that are going back in, you know, in their minds and things. So as leaders, it's really, really important for you to understand where they are, for one, and number two, get them all back to a place of, you know, of sanity, really. And maybe their baseline a little bit. So, I mean, you don't have to go through the Trident approach to reintegrate your team, but you do have to take care and make sure that that's something you accomplish before you're at full speed ahead again.
Great, also. And then Diego, I will have your contact information in the subtitles of the YouTube for our audience to be able to reach out to you as well. Love the comment too, just about, as leaders, it's just important to just be aware. It's important to be, you know, realize that everybody has gone through a very traumatic time during COVID. And when you're coming back to the office or whatever that hybrid model looks like, really take a pulse, really take a step back and take a pulse about where people are and where they want to go and what needs to change moving forward. So Diego, thank you so much for your time today. I thank the audience for supporting us. If you are not already a subscriber on our channel, The Power of Connection and Biz Show with Kimberly Lane, we encourage you to do so. Thanks again, Diego. Thanks, everybody. Have a happy holiday, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now.
Thank you, Kim. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Anytime, Diego. Thank you.